At the tribunal night, all the kids gathered for the night, and the newbies were given tribes which they were supposed to be doing competitions in, doing life in, and Will was placed in the Eddies, or you could say the green tribe, where George belonged, which is something that George actually also worked upon behind the scenes. Solidarity songs were sung during this time, statements just from each team led by the team leaders, trying to show how they are ready to win and the different competitions that are going to happen in the camp. And we get to see the competitive side of every who happens to be the team leader for Color Red, because we were told earlier on in the movie how Avery is so competitive. This is something that George told Will. Now we get to see her competitiveness, a little bit of it at this point. More singing, but more like chanting. The night ends. The next day the competitions start. The next morning, Will was not too excited to participate in the competitions. So while George was trying to get him to wake up and go get ready for the competitions, Will reminded him that he does not want to be here because he's surrounded by Jesus freaks. Something which George said it could offend him, but he's not offended. Will goes on to tell him, you know what, rule number 1, always have an exit plan. The problem is this time around, the exit plan leads to juvie. While having break time that day, the student starts to chant. Everyone starts to chant 5 minutes. Will asks George what 5 minutes is all about, and George just tells him, you're not gonna like this, because by that time the leader of the apostle is calling Will to come and sit for the 5 minutes, which the students call in the camp the 5 minutes of fame, where they put a chair on top of the table and the person who is having the 5 minutes of fame sits on and can be asked any question for the next 5 minutes. Will was called to the seat while the chanting continued for 5 minutes, and all the students excited, and the question and firing began. But the questions that were fired to Will answered them so well that the leader of the apostle thought that it would get him embarrassed, but it just got him more fame. And he gained lots and lots of support from the students who came to love him even more after knowing about him. While we were done with the 5 minutes of fame, Will was called upon by the leader of the camp, who is Avery's father, and just warned him not to put the camp on Craigslist. A few minutes later, the rest of the kids come out. Avery goes on to tell Will that he was good with the 5 minutes of fame, but it's about to get real with the competitions. And she goes on to say, well, I'll see you at the blob. And Will goes on to say, without even knowing what blob is, continues to say, oh yeah, I'll see you. I also love blob. George asks Will, are you sure? Well, yeah, in fact, where I came from, the kids called me blobastic. And when George took Will to practice blob, Will realized it is not something that he wants, or it's not something that he even knows how to do. It was something he said because he just wanted to impress Avery, but now he had to actually learn to do the game and literally do the actual game. We are graced with another musical during this moment. During one of the games, Presley gets hit by 3 balls from Team Apostle. George tries to save Presley from having the hit from the balls, but failed. The balls went ahead and hit Presley. In our next scene, we see Presley trying to put some ice on the bruised place where she got hit. We see Amy Grant featuring in at this point, handling the ice to Presley. Will and George comes in trying to go and check on Presley, but George could not go in to face Presley. When Presley saw that George was somewhere in the corner, she also began to hide away. Avery encouraged her to just talk to him. He's just coming to say hello. But also George could not bring himself to talk to Presley. These two, they were really playing that game of being attracted to each other but not able to face each other and talk. So they still didn't talk at this point. At this point, we are graced by the song Baby Baby, which was sung in the movie by George at this point, only that it was in his dream, but we actually got to see the actual song. The original Baby Baby is by Amy Grant. In the next game, which was more like a fighting kind of game, Avery and Will got to cooperate while in the battlefield, and they worked together and won Team Apostle. When Team Apostle was down, Avery shot Will, giving the win to Avery's team, Angels, which was color red. Later on in the movie, there was like a bonfire where everyone went around sharing something inspirational and something encouraging. When Avery's turn came, she shared and she started the song Awesome God, which was mashed up with God Only Knows. Will and Avery had a connection that night, and Avery gave Will something, a picture. Will was about to tell Avery his past, but he did not get a chance to share. He thanked her and they went their separate ways to their cabins. But the leader of Team Apostle was not so impressed with all the love that Will was getting. He was determined to dig some dirt off Will, so he sneaked into the offices where records are kept, and that's where he found out the details about Will's life, which made him really happy. He could not wait. The next morning, while Will was set to practice and rehearse with his team, the musical which they was to present in the final games, the leader for the Apostles calls him to have a private talk with him, and that's where he got to let him know that he knows everything about him and he needs to tell Avery and do the right thing. Will didn't feel like he really fit in the place anymore. He went back into his cabin and packed all his bags and decided to walk away. George tries to look for Will but could not find him, runs into Avery and explains that he could not find Will and he's not sure, but they had a conversation with the team leader for Apostles that could have triggered him. So Avery joined the search. Avery eventually asks for the car from his dad and runs after Will and catches up with him. Avery tried to explain to him why he cannot just live like that, but Will could not have any of that. Avery tried to explain to him that they had something special, that he should not be walking away, and Will said there is nothing special here that could make him stay. Eventually, Avery gave up on trying to convince him through the picture which he had left behind, the picture which Avery had given him the night before, and then drove back to the camp. We get to enjoy another musical. Will is thinking through the words Avery has shared and the memories the picture brings, and Will eventually decides to go back to the camp and join the team. Avery was so happy to see him. While they talked, he was trying to explain himself, but Avery just gave him a kiss. This is literally the only kiss in the movie. So yeah, during the time for George's team to sing, George was surprised to hear Will sing. Will was in the room. He joined them, sang with his team, and they literally won the whole thing. Camp was finally over. George gathered up the courage to speak to Presley and also gave her the letters that he had written for a whole year. And also team leader Blue made up with Will. He apologized for all that he did to him. They made peace and they looked forward to competing the next year. While Will was wondering if he now has to go to juvie or the horns, George's mom gave him the good news that he's actually adopting him and they'll become brothers with George, which is something that really made the two boys extremely happy. And that's how the movie ends.